It does run most of the cities that are in bad shape. We have many cities in great shape, too, by the way. I want you to know that. But it seems that the ones that are run by the radical left Democrats, what they've done to San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, they're very unsafe places. And we're going to straighten them out one by one. And this is going to be a major part for some of the people in this room. That's a war, too. It's a war from within. Controlling the physical territory of our border is essential to national security. But I want to salute every service member who has helped us carry out this critical mission. It's really a very important mission. And I told Pete we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military. Because we're going into Chicago very soon. That's a big city with an incompetent governor, stupid.
Using American cities as training grounds for the United States military. That was part of President Trump's partisan address yesterday to hundreds of America's top military leaders at a Marine Corps base in Quantico, Virginia. Joining us now, MSNBC contributor Mike Barnicle, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Mark Hergling. Good morning to you both. General, I'll start with you and just your reaction. I'm sure you've talked to some of your old colleagues, maybe who are in the room or some who just watched at home. What was the reaction to that spectacle yesterday?
Yeah, Willie, I did talk to a few. Many people in that room I've served with. I didn't retire that long ago, so some of those senior members were junior members when I was still in the service. What was interesting is it came about in two parts. First of all, Secretary Hegseth's address. I took notes as he spoke, as I was watching it. And just some of the things that I made bullet points about were Liberation Day, kill things and break people, or kill people and break things, war crimes, Geneva Convention elimination, rules of engagements are unnecessary, suggesting women can't meet the standards, returning to the days of drill sergeants smoking recruits during basic training, suggesting the elimination of IG actions, especially as he's being investigated for the use of signal apps by those IGs. Hawking his own book at the end, The War on Warriors, I've read, and it's a compilation of thoughts from a disgruntled soldier who has very little understanding of strategic implications of various actions. Then when it turned to the president, you've already addressed this, a meandering, just all sorts of issues, much like the UN speech he gave. So many things to talk about from that speech, but the war from within, as you just mentioned, and putting soldiers on American streets to train how to react to different enemies from within were two of the highlights that I wrote down. And it was just a combination of two things that I believe we're leading to what we might see next. And the other thing I'd say is President Trump thrives on applause and cheering and interactions with an audience. And when he didn't get that and instead got quiet professionalism from the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines in the audience, that likely rattled them from the very beginning. And that silence wasn't disrespect. It was restraint and discipline and adherence to the oath of office. Yesterday was, to me, a collective reminder of our professional culture that we have in the military that transcends politics. It was on full display, and it was interesting to watch from both sides of the audience.
It was the oath to the Constitution, not to the man standing in front of them. So can you speak, General, just for people watching this morning who have so much coming at them 24 hours a day, why this you view as so unusual and so dangerous to be talking about using American cities as, quote, training grounds for the American military and having the United States military go in and effectively do domestic policing of gangs and whatever else Donald Trump wants them to do?
Well, primarily, Willie, is because it's illegal. And it violates our oath of office to defend the Constitution, which says the military is not to be used. Specifically, that was put in the Constitution against securing American streets other than when there is an insurrection within the Republic, which President Lincoln saw. But the indications are people are asking us to prepare to do that. So that means there's measures afoot to try and make that happen. Because I don't see it, and you can bet that all the 400 or 800 people in that audience, the generals and the senior enlisted advisors, don't see it either. And many of them have seen conflict. They have been involved in war. They know what it's like, and they also know you don't take up arms against innocent civilians, especially ones in the United States who are executing their First Amendment rights of free speech and protesting against the government.
General, I don't know whether you've seen the front page of the Wall Street Journal today. I'm now holding it up on camera. There's a photo shot of the front rows of many of the former members, your former friends in the military, sitting there watching and listening to the spectacle yesterday. And I, too, spoke to several of your colleagues, former colleagues, yesterday. And the word I kept hearing from them was embarrassment. Because if you look at that picture and you listen or have viewed what happened yesterday in Quantico, you saw myriad numbers of Silver Star awards. You saw myriad Purple Hearts, Bronze Stars, Combat Infantry badges, and they were being lectured on how to do push-ups and lose weight and shave, and it was truly mortifying. But the larger question is, going forward, what happens to the military in this country when there's so much disarray within the building, the Pentagon, where the Defense Department is housed, and various components of the military around the globe, with this internal dissension that you can seemingly feel when you witness an event like yesterday?
Yeah, it struck me too, Mike, that when you look at those faces, it's what I predicted when I was on the show the other day, and that you're going to get poker faces and a stoicism that was reflective of professionalism. But truthfully, those individuals will leave that room or left that room yesterday, and they'll start discussing and analyzing how they can implement some of the lawful orders that they got. Okay, great. We can buck up the standards. We can take a look at the kinds of things to get some soldiers, not all, certainly not even the majority, back in better shape. Take a look at what our ranks look like. But there were also soldiers and all ranks of services in that audience that said, wait a minute, when they were writing down the same kind of checklist that I was writing down, saying, wait a minute, we can't do that, or we shouldn't do that, or this is a true violation of what we are as professionals, or, hey, I've got women in my ranks who are performing admirably. Why should I kind of lump them all together like the secretary did? Or I'm certainly now going to debate with myself, what am I going to say if I'm asked to go on the street and conduct illegal actions? And I guarantee you that the people in that audience will not execute illegal orders. We've been saying that for a long time. But at the same time, all of them, not only were they personally embarrassed, but they were embarrassed for their services that had to, sit in that audience and listen to this kind of stuff. That's the worst part of all this. There's a saying in the military that's a great leadership dictum. You praise in public and you discipline in private. This was a disciplinary approach in public with cameras so the whole nation could see. And it was an attempt at separating the military institution from the people that they defend. And I don't think it worked very well, but I'm sure there's a lot of people questioning what the military will do next. I'm sure of what they will do next. They will make sure they don't follow illegal orders and maintain their
job
like they did yesterday.
They'll do their job. General, there was such an extraordinary misreading of the room by Pete Hegseth and the President of the United States, who have absolutely no idea who they were talking to. I understand Pete Hegseth served, and I'm grateful for his service in uniform to this country. But I do wonder how they could have so badly misread the room. I kept thinking, watching them yesterday, just how Bush League it was. and how those generals and those admirals afterwards were just shaking their heads going, my God, what a clown show. And that's what they were thinking. That's what so many people in the military, even if members of the military support the president, and there are a good number that do support the president, this sort of speech and doing this with generals and admirals pushing. I want to talk about the culture really quickly before we let you go, just to explain to viewers something that I was blessed to be able to see when I was a member of the Armed Services Committee for 4 terms. I got a chance to see generals and admirals up close, to figure out what drove them. And it was, of course, a love of country. But as I was saying to some people in 2020, when they're saying, oh, no, the military, Donald Trump's going to get the military, they're going to rise up and they're going to keep Donald Trump in power. I said, no, you don't understand the military. They will not do that. And I said, for several reasons. But as I've always said, and I'd like you to explain this, there's a peer pressure in all the right way, because every general and every admiral has a mentor who's a retired general and a retired admiral. And I always saw when one stepped out of line, this band of brothers would come together. And they were always looking. I had chief of staffs of the Air Force. And I had them looking to their retired generals, or in the Navy, retired admirals for guidance. And that was their audience too. They understood they were duty bound by the Constitution, but also by those whose shoulders they were standing on in their position. Can you please talk about that just for a minute to explain that this is so much more than just a room of 800 military leaders? There's a collective room, really, the spirit of, teaching them duty, honor, and country, of tens of thousands of people still with us and no longer with us that are guiding those generals and admirals.
Yeah, Joe, I'd love to talk about that for a second. First of all, I'll shout out to my mentors. I've got about 5 of them. The biggest one is General Fred Franks, who was a 4-star general when I was a young major working for him. He took me under his wing. He's still living and a great example. Lost a leg in Vietnam and understands and rose to the rank of 4-star when he was commanding Desert Storm. John Abizaid, who many people know from his service, Rick Shinseki. I could go on and on again, the guys who mentored me throughout, and I mentor a few others, and the few that I mentor were contacting me last night. Barry McCaffrey, who you're going to have on in a little while, was also one of my mentors. That's a core of the professional force. What is also important to know, to address the points that you made, is the military is a profession. It is not a business. They don't get paid very much, but they do it for something bigger than themselves that no one else in the society could do. That's an element of a profession. Another element of a profession is they have a professional code of ethics and values, which are embedded in each individual. A third element of a profession is that fellow professionals discipline and even dismiss others within the profession if they violate the norms of the profession, which gets to what you're talking about. So those are 3 of the 5 elements of a profession which hold us together tightly and cause the military to do things differently. And the last one is the caring for soldiers. The big part about what we're seeing today is not loyalty just to the oath of office, but it's also loyalty to those we lead and a shared trust between the leaders and the led. And those men and women in the room yesterday cannot let their soldiers or Marines or airmen or sailors down in terms of standing up for them and what right looks like. So you've hit a very good point. That's what makes us very different.